Hello, DevOps Demon Hunters! Is my camera frozen again? Yes, it seems to be. That is a problem that seems to be occurring more often than I wanted to. Give me just a sec. At least I think I can fix it while the stream is running, so that's a plus. How's it going? I'm Jochen, the Monospace Mentor. Welcome to my stream. Hello everyone. Hello SP4. Hello Balthazar. Good to see you guys. Yeah, I'm back with a live coding stream, actually. Good job showing that camera how it's done. Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a live coding stream, actually. I'm going to do some DevOps work, some infrastructure work on our hosting platform, and I'm looking forward to it. How is everyone? I'm doing good, and I haven't watched the movie yet. Can you believe it? I'm still lagging behind. Full Snabel, hello, how you doing? Happy end of August. It's almost autumn again. And I don't mind. Temperature's falling a little bit. More time for more tea. Yeah, it's got an amazing reputation, so it's definitely at the top of my watch list. I just haven't found the time yet. Initially, I thought it would be a series, but yeah, I mean, it still can become one. Judging from the success it had, it might actually spawn a series. We'll see. Well done, Netflix. Yeah, first things first, I'm going to answer a question on Mastodon. I just posted a post on my dot files that you can find at gitlab.com/gwiz/dotfiles. And someone reached out and says, it seems you're a Chamois user as well. Does it ever feel a bit too complicated to you? I sometimes hope I could get a tool with integrated version control. I feel there's too many steps to take whenever I update my configuration. And yeah, I can see why they might feel that way. How do I do this? Yeah, let's switch between my tabs here. So let's go to my dot files, gitlab.com/gwiz/dotfiles. And yes, they are managed by Chamois. And Chamois is definitely a little bit more complex than other dot file management solutions, because it does more than just basically rolling out dot files. What I like about Chamois first and foremost is that I don't have to use actual dot files in my repository, because as you can see, it's pretty obvious what happens here. Files and directories that start with dot_ get translated into an actual dot file starting with a period. And Chamois does not symlink, it instead copies. So it creates a copy of, say, dot_vimrc and copies that into your home directory under .vimrc. That actually prevents problems, because if I remove a file from my repository, I don't get any dangling symlinks. I might have remaining scripts in my home directory that are not managed by Chamois anymore. That's true, but at least I don't have any dangling symlinks that point into the void, and I appreciate that. What makes my dot files and Chamois in general more manageable, and that's what I'm going to answer to that person, is that first I have this just file here in my repository where I can at least abbreviate the management. So I can write just apply to run Chamois apply, and I can say just update to run Chamois update. It's just 3 letters that I'm saving here, but if there are going to be more steps to an application or to an update, then I just need to add them here to the just file, and the commands that I need to run won't change. So that's the first thing. So what I do, say I get out my laptop and haven't used it in a while, so I want to update my dot files, which I certainly have changed on my workstation in the meantime, then I will simply go into the Chemwa directory and run just update. Just update runs Chemwa update, and what's built into Chemwa update is a git pull. I don't have to do that myself. Chemwa does a git pull to update all the dot files in the repository, and then it runs an apply to apply those potentially updated dot files. So all I have to do is just update, and that does it. Bethesda says, do love me some just, especially if you have some nuanced commands. Yep, definitely. And Proxy is joining us. Cool, cool, cool. Saying, good morning. Anyone getting an echo on occasion? No, this room is really, really small, so there's no echo in here. Not everyone can live in a mansion like you, Proxeus. A second hot mic. Let me check. Let's not just. No, I only have one microphone source here, so there shouldn't be anything else getting picked up. And yeah, the room is actually too small to create any significant echo. And there's too much stuff in here, like the shelf and things. So maybe reload your browser. Maybe it's this time, other than the audio video sync, the issue that we had last time, that this one might actually be solved by reloading Twitch. By the way, SBFR asked at the beginning of the stream if I had resolved my audio video sync issue. Yes, I have. After the stream, I did some tests, some clapping test recordings, and it turned out at that time I had to increase my audio delay from 150 milliseconds to 800 milliseconds. When I did my recording test today, I paid more attention to audio-video sync, and with the 800 milliseconds, it was completely out of sync, and so I reverted back to the 150 milliseconds, and lo and behold, it works again. And so no idea what caused the 800 milliseconds on Friday. We are back to our usual settings again. So, dot file updates are pretty much covered by the just update. However, thanks to automation features of Chemwa, I can even update my development environment in the same command, and that is because I have these run after and run once commands in here. And the prefix run after means run after Chemwa apply, and so I built a little script that does a brew bundle check, and if that turns out that yeah, we need to update some files from homebrew, then we'll run a brew bundle install, and it'll pull in all the updates, which means, again, in the laptop scenario, I pull out my laptop, start it, I go into the Chemwa directory and run just update. It'll do a git pull, get all the new dot files, apply all the updated dot files, and then it'll run this brew bundle install script, which means that after a minute or so, I have a completely updated development environment. And the camera is frozen again. Something is not okay with my capture device. Maybe it's overheating. I have it's getting warm. It's not really getting hot. I'll try and reset it again. It's not getting hot. It's getting warm. And in the past, I simply had to disconnected and reconnected, and that did the trick. Fortunately, I can do that now while OBS is running, and it doesn't seem to change the USB device, which it did in the past, which meant that I basically had to restart OBS to pick up the new USB device, and then hopefully it would be stable. It doesn't seem to be too stable at the moment. I have no idea why all these issues are creeping in here. And that is actually why I have a USB hub under my desk that has a switch for each port, so I can simply push the button to disconnect the USB device to power it down, basically, and then push the button again to power it up again. And that seems to do a reset fine, and OBS is actually picking up the reset device. It's still annoying, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. All right, so let's answer the question on Mastodon about my dot files. Go to the monospace. Let's say, hi. I'm actually pretty happy with Chimois and its features. I had to check out the docs initially, but now everything runs on autopilot. To catch up, I simply run just update the just file, and thanks to run after brew, it even updates all my CLI commands afterwards too. Let me know if you have any questions. Bim. All right, and if you have any questions, of course, pop into chat and let me know. I'm more than happy to help with all kinds of system administration stuff. Okay. Speaking of system administration stuff, let's get right into things. What I need to do today is add an attribute to our MySQL Chef cookbooks that allow me to modify another MySQL setting that I don't think has been covered yet. But maybe let's check that first. Maybe all the work has already been done. I have no idea. So let's see. Let's go into the MySQLX cookbook. And the server attributes. The way Chef works is that you define what's called node attributes. Every server is a node and can have an arbitrary number of node attributes, which is basically a huge nested hash. And that way you can, for example, set configuration settings, and these node attributes then get picked up by the infrastructure code, which is built as so-called recipes. And you basically then, for example, simply use these node attributes to set configuration settings in a configuration file template. And the specific MySQL setting that I'm after is called transaction isolation. And there is actually an attribute, transaction dash isolation. I do not like the way these attributes mix and match dashes with underscores. I much rather would have underscores throughout. However, I inherited these attributes from a community cookbook that at least for some time was unmaintained, and so I basically forked it and renamed it to MySQLX. It was originally called, of course, MySQL, and my fork is named MySQLX just to avoid any confusion. Basically, MySQL extended. And yeah, I wasn't even aware that this attribute was in here. Transaction isolation, that's interesting. And let's find where this is actually used. Let's get a new shell. The way I set up my development terminal here is usually in Tmux window 1, I have my editor. In Tmux window 2, I usually have a shell to do repository management, git commits, and things like that. And if I want to go into a specific cookbooks directory, I spawn a third window where I say, okay, go into source MySQLX. And here I can then run an easy RG transaction isolation. And yes, it gets used in 2 templates. In the default template, where we set a MySQL setting transaction dash isolation equals, and in a specific template, that's the default template, and for Ubuntu 16, which we still have a few legacy databases running that, there is basically the same setting, but only if it's set. Then the setting gets included in the configuration file, otherwise it gets left out. That explains why we are setting it to nil here, which I find a little bit ugly. I'd rather have the default setting for MySQL in here and then lose the conditional here altogether. I'll just set it to a sensible default and then keep setting it in the configuration file. But again, that is inherited by the original cookbook authors, and I'm not going to do a breaking change now to modify that. What I could do is add a fix me comment so that if I get to do a breaking change for some reason, I can do that in the same process. I think that would make sense. So let's go in here and say fix me set sensible default, and that might include setting different defaults for different MySQL versions. Maybe they changed the transaction isolation default value, but that's nothing that I need to deal with at this point. I hate how this camera keeps switching off. Let me think. So, wait, let's reset it again. Okay. I could get some duct tape and tape the USB HDMI adapter to a metal bar under my desk. That's what I did before, but I think the tape that I used simply got loose. That way, the metal chassis of the USB device has a little bit of a heatsink. Maybe that'll improve things. Maybe it won't, but I think it's worth giving it a try. So give me a minute, and I'll be right back with some duct tape, and then I'll crawl under my desk and fix this, and hopefully I'll be back in about 2 minutes' time. So see you around. Well, that's not good either. Okay, it looks like the camera switched off when it didn't have any pickup. Let's reconnect the camera then. Oh dear. Okay. When it rains, it pours. Okay, that means we need to reset the power supply of the camera. Just a second. So where's that cable? Okay. Oh, it's there. All right. So let's go back to our code. But weren't you here? I thought you were here. Are you here? Are we here at all? Balthazar, don't cause me an existential crisis, okay? Transaction isolation. Okay, that means I don't have to do much infrastructure code. Because the base cookbook already provides the correct, as I assume, settings. So let me check out my related documentation. That's in linear here, and let's take a look at the MySQL docs regarding this setting. That's the set transaction statement. Let's follow that. That's if you want to set it in running operation. And what's the name of the setting, the configuration setting in the configuration file? It's transaction-isolation. And the default is repeatable read. So that is the default that I think should have been set here. Repeatable-read. And the thing is, the reason I'm dealing with this in the first place is that Drupal needs a different setting. Drupal, at least in newer versions, wants to have a different setting, and that is the read committed setting instead of repeatable read. By setting it to read committed, the behavior of selects that are executed within a single transaction will behave a little bit differently. The main effect of changing this setting is that some transactions will not block as easily, or even deadlock in the worst case. And that's why I'm looking into this whole thing. I guess it makes sense to make this the default on our hosting platform if Drupal wants it that way. I'm pretty confident and optimistic that WordPress will probably behave equally and not lock as much. And since we are specialized in high-performance hosting for Drupal and WordPress, it simply makes sense to optimize the platform to what these two content management systems need, even if that differs from the default setting in the database. And the most foundational requirement is that we can actually influence the transaction isolation setting, which we apparently can. The cookbook already has everything in place that we need to have here. The only thing that we'd have to change is in another cookbook that builds upon this base cookbook, which is called, I guess we'll use FryStillBox MySQL here. And here we'll change the default setting for isolation level to read committed. So the change that we'd need is in here, because this cookbook is specialized for MySQL on our hosting platform FryStillBox, and here we can deviate from the default setting. Bethesda says in cyberspace no one can hear you scream, no matter what baud rate you try to negotiate at. Well, except if you're a modem, then everyone can hear you scream. All right. Now, I'm still not 100% sure if I want to change this setting. I guess I need to let it simmer a little bit in my background processes. However, I can actually at least make a proposal merge request, I guess. And so we will simply go ahead. I'll copy the Git branch name that Linear suggests for me, and where do I find them? Did they hide it again? Oh wait, that's a project, so the project of course needs some issues. I did some research on the transaction isolation actually. I think I can mark this off as done, and we'll add another issue. Change default value for transaction isolation. Of course, that's not done. That is in progress. I'll assign it to myself. Create the issue, and once I go into this issue, then I can get a branch name that will automatically connect my changes with this linear issue. And so I can go into my terminal window. I'll do a git pull just to make sure that I have all the latest changes, which there were. Yeah, it looks like changes I made during my semi-holidays. And that's the fix me comment. Okay, so we'll commit that with the change, even though it's going the actual change is going to happen in a different cookbook. So let's create a new branch with the issue number ENG235, and now I can make the changes that I want to do, and I think I'm going to use an override here where I'll override MySQLx tunable transaction dash isolation, unfortunately, and we'll set that to read committed, right? No, it's repeatable read. No, the default is repeatable read, is it? repeatable read. Apparently, yep. Okay. And we need to set it to read committed. And it's a good idea to create a test for that. So let's go into test, integration, default spec. At the moment we are only testing commands. I think I just noticed the camera is again stuck, even though it's not as hot anymore. Now that I've taped it to the steel frame of my desk, it definitely cooled down. Maybe I need to pull out the other HDMI adapter again. I did buy another HDMI converter exactly because I was running into this issue a few years ago. But then I tried the Maxwell again, and it worked, and so the other one went into storage. I guess I need to pull it out again and see if that changes things. Okay, we have a default spec file here. I think we should name this more appropriately, especially since we are now also doing configuration changes. I think the default spec should be renamed to db create spec, because that's what it's actually testing. Hey, Sebas. Which OS? That is Bluefin, a variant of Fedora Silverblue, which I think is, at the moment, one of the best development Linux distributions that there are, with its support for homebrew, a lot of stuff already being built in that caters towards developers, and the camera is stuck again. I do hate it. Sorry for that, but I don't think I'll keep pushing the button on this on a per minute basis. We'll just keep the camera as it is. At least it's not a very unflattering picture. Yeah, I need to fix the hardware that does the HDMI conversion for me. And so yeah, Bluefin is something that I can highly recommend, and regulars like Balthasar and Praxeus know that I keep singing its praises. And yeah, I will for the foreseeable future, because it really does great work for me. Alright, so what I want to do is add another spec file, and we'll call that config spec, because it'll test the configuration changes this cookbook does. I think I'm going to steal a lot of logic here from the MySQLX cookbook, because that, of course, does some extensive configuration checks, doesn't it? That's not the right directory. I need to go into test, integration, server, tunables spec, exactly. And I need to copy these functions to query MySQL configuration settings. So Shocks, hello, how you doing? Sorry for the frozen camera picture. Planning to learn DevOps, need a good roadmap. There are a few good DevOps roadmaps out there, and I'm definitely going to add to them as well eventually. When I find the time, maybe one good source could be Lana's courses on YouTube. So that should get you at least a good overview which topics you need to cover to get more into DevOps. Biko Farm joining us. Grüß Gottle. Hope you're doing well. Chippy Chapper, hello. Is this like a backend for something in Python with MySQL? No, it's actually Ruby. To be more precise, it's Chef, because we have been running a managed hosting platform for 15 years now. And when we started out in 2010, I chose Chef as our infrastructure as code solution to basically manage hundreds of Linux servers for our hosting platform. And turns out the configuration language that Chef is using is actually Ruby. It extends the Ruby syntax simply with a few helper and quality of life things that you can use in infrastructure as code settings. And other than that, it's actual Ruby. So that's what's got me into Ruby coding, and I quite quickly fell into love with the language. And I still am 15 years later. Actually, lately I was looking for a companion language with which I can build command line tools. And of course, I looked at Go and Rust. Rust is, and that's purely subjective from my perspective, is a little bit too esoteric as a syntax to me. It's just not that familiar to someone like me who grew up with languages like, say, Pascal, C, and similar languages, and Ruby, of course. So I looked at Go, which is another easy candidate in terms of DevOps foundational languages. I mean, the whole Kubernetes ecosystem is written in Go. And so I did start using Go, but Go also has a few idiosyncrasies that I really don't like is maybe a bit too strong a word, but that feel off to me. And actually, I decided, at least for the short term, I'll use Crystal. Crystal is heavily inspired by Ruby and shares about 80% of its syntax with Ruby, which makes, of course, getting into Crystal really, really easy. But it's a typed and compiled language, so it does have all the advantages that languages like Rust and Go have as well. And so I'm going to rebuild the CLI tool that I've started building and basically migrate it from the little Go code I've written so far to Crystal code. And then I'll have a much easier time maintaining that. All right, I guess we can push the camera button every 5 minutes or so, simply to let you know that I'm still here and that it's not AI talking to you. Now, I'm a little bit turned off by the fact that I have to copy so much boilerplate code here, but I guess it needs to be done. Let me see. I mean, in this file, we define a lot of system variables that need to be checked, and then we go through them one by one and see if the configuration file matches. And So we do not actually have to copy this, apparently. Interesting. Okay, so wait. It's frozen again. I hate it. It doesn't even take a minute to freeze again. All right. Last time it was the audio-video sync that was off. This time, after the stream, I'll replace my HDMI converter. There's always something, isn't there? Now, that means I can go into, where is it? DB. No, that's not it. That's the DB create spec. The conf spec. So basically, we'll use that. And that's not it either. I'm confused. That's the tunable spec that I need. And I guess we'll just copy these two lines. Oh, that's system variables. That's a different setting. Okay, let me see. System variables. But I think that is what we need. And then we actually have to copy that stuff. Okay. So let's try and not use version system variables. Maybe we can get away with checking that directly. And let's copy this part. What I want to check is that transaction isolation is set to read committed. That's the only setting we need to check right now. And so we'll try and simply iterate over system variables and call check MySQL variable. We don't need any config settings, apparently. Not yet, at least. And since we need to execute a MySQL command, we need a login. And the way we solved that in the other cookbook is apparently by simply setting the root password in the file. And then, of course, we need to make sure that the test VM that gets spawned I was a little bit confused by Baker Farm's comment. Damn tech, how about a pony farm? You meant that, yeah, something like woodworking or starting a farm would get meat into something that's less prone to breaking. Yeah, I can see what you mean. So in the kitchen.yaml file of our cookbook, which is VersaBox MySQL here, we need to make sure that we set a root password that fits our tests. And so I guess down here, we already set a root password because we do have to make tests already, to run tests already, and it's still I like random passwords. So yeah, that should do the trick, I think. And what I wanted to do beforehand and then forgot because of the damn camera is that I wanted to actually run the test VM. We'll start with a Ubuntu 20.04 one. So let's do a test kitchen converge server Ubuntu 20.04. Of course, we'll eventually have to run all 6 of these infrastructure test VMs, but while we are developing, one of them will suffice. Maybe I could teach a pony to press the button every minute or so. But it's going to be hard to fit a pony in here as well. And with me having a ponytail, I guess I'll have to be that pony for the time being. I don't remember it being that brittle back in the day when I started having these reliability issues with the Maxwell USB device. It did break once during a stream or something like that, but not every minute. Ooh, that's a deep cut, my dear Beaker Farm. Nee, 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 nee. Okay, so it did converge, which means the VM is set up according to my settings, and that means I should be able to run a test kitchen verify now, which will run all the existing tests plus my new test. And hopefully everything is successful. Let's find my added test and see if it works. There is transaction isolation, but it doesn't compare a value. Here, these other tests actually try and test temp table size, then tab, and here we only get transaction isolation. Maybe it's a dash? Does it convert dashes to... Actually, we are calling MySQL config value here, which isn't even defined in this test file, which means the MySQL config value from the MySQL X test actually is reachable from here, and that means we don't even have to define or redefine this function here. So code-wise, I think this should work too. It does. Okay, these functions are global, which is not great from an architectural standpoint, but it's only about tests, so I guess we are okay. And I can actually add a comment here. This test uses methods from the MySQLX cookbook. So this check MySQL variable and stuff. Okay, so strangely enough, this doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually log into my test VM, become root, and now I need to see the correct MySQL command that gets issued. So from MySQL X tunables spec, Is it a config setting or a system level setting? That needs to be found out, because one of them gets checked by show variables and the other is, oh, that's actually getting checked in the configuration file regardless of the running database. Okay, so we need to find out if we can even query that. So there is transaction-isolation. So let's see, show variables like show variables like I guess we'll simply look for trans. Okay, so there is a transaction underscore isolation and has repeatable read, which is the correct no, is it? That's the default. Something is going wrong here. Okay, so underscore isolation. And wait, what? Yeah, it's Firebox MySQL configuration. So we need to check transaction underscore isolation, and that should be read committed. So if I run my verification now, we'll have a broken test. We don't, because it still only matches transaction underscore isolation with no value behind it. Huh. This is some behavior that I don't expect. If setting nil or setting empty string, then it's just a variable. So the setting is MySQL config value. And MySQL config value comes from where? It's not in here. Interesting. Alright, so let's go into that cookbook. MySQL config value, that's in the helpers, okay. So test integration default, no, that's wrong directory. Down here, test integration helper. That's just if the value needs to be translated into a number. If you have a value that is in kilobytes or megabytes, then it'll multiply them. Is there... Do we have the issue that our value actually ends with K or M? Is that the problem? Because, yeah, most of these values are actual numbers, at least, or numbers with a unit. Some of them are strings, and we shouldn't actually modify those. I guess MySQL config value should be a little bit more restrictive in that we test for a number followed by M or K, and not just something ending in M or K. But that still doesn't explain why our value seems to be 0. So let me again see how this works. We need the configuration check. System variables. If transaction underscore isolation committed does not end with K or M, so that shouldn't be an issue. And then we call check MySQL variable transaction underscore isolation, and we check for the value read committed. We can add some debug information here, testing we'll need a printf instead. So let's run that test again. Still successful. Where's the output? I guess that's at the beginning of the test run. Right? There's no output at all. That might be because it's running inside the VM and gets filtered out or something. Okay, but still, stuff like character set server gets checked for this particular string, and concurrent insert gets tested for always and things like that. But transaction isolation just gets checked if it's... Yeah, it gets checked without a value, and that matches always. If I query transaction for anything, I get back anything. And yeah, that works out, but that's not what I need. And it doesn't get set correctly either. It doesn't get set to read committed, but repeatable read, which is the default. So something is going off the rails here. Let's comment that out. Is that even the real check that gets run? Previously we had 80 successful tests. Do we only have 79 now? We still have 80, so something is definitely off here. And I see what it is. I'm in the MySQL X cookbook and not in the MySQL, in the FrySeebox MySQL one. I'm testing the wrong cookbook. I meant to avoid that and forgot about changing the directory. So we will tkd server Ubuntu 2004. We need to delete that VM. Wrong cookbook to test. We need to change into FrySeebox _ MySQL. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't help sharpening your axe to get through the forest more quickly. You need to check first that you are in the right forest to begin with. Okay, so now let's see. TKL should have also... It only has 1 times 3 test suites, not 2 times 3. Because we don't test the client. Okay. Let's then converge the default Ubuntu 2004. Guess we can re-enable that. And we'll probably have to copy these methods again, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't work this way. That's why I was confused earlier. I was apparently calling methods that weren't defined in here, but I wasn't actually. We'll see that quite quickly, though. Now we have to spin up this VM from scratch, set up MySQL and that stuff. Unfortunately, that's part of the development lifestyle. Sometimes you take a detour. I'll have to switch on the fan in here. It's getting really, really hot. That'll also help the machine. I can feel it, and the machine can feel it too. If you look at the CPU temperature up there, with the new cooler, it's only in the 60 degrees instead of in the 80s as before. And yeah, I mean it's running code at the moment, but it occasionally now drops below 60, and that's thanks to the fan that I've put in the window. What is keeping you, Balthazar? When you say you can't wait to be able to open up the windows? Okay. Oh, I see. Temperature is still too high to open the windows in the first place. I see. No, outside it's pretty decent at the moment. We are in the 20-ish degrees, so in around 20 degrees here in Ireland, and so that's nice. But inside my little office, I'm running 27 degrees. So pushing in a little bit of fresh air from outside definitely makes a change. Makes a difference. That's that. It at least successfully converged. Now let's see if it also tests successfully. And we'll probably see that it's missing the methods that I'm calling. Yeah, that's the stack trace. Failed to load profile tests, failed to load source, config spec, undefined method, check MySQL variable. So we do have to copy that stuff over from the other cookbook, and yeah, reluctantly I will do that. Maybe we can pave the way to something better, though. Let me take a look. The MySQL X cookbook already has a helper library where we define the MySQL config value method. Is it possible to include that? I think it is, because in here we do it. We have to do it manually. And I think we can actually benefit from running a monorepo here where all our cookbooks are in a single repository, because we can actually include stuff across cookbooks. This can have side effects, but it shouldn't have any significant ones in our case. So I will still have to copy the other helper functions from the actual test file here, but the I can use that helper file. I will make another fix me comment in here. Move helper methods into library to make them reusable in other cookbooks. So let's see. I'm gonna put this here in front of the actual methods here. For MySQL config value, we need to include that. Oh, didn't intend it to delete it. We still need to keep it here. So let's see. I think this is the one. And instead of version system variables, we'll try and access system variables directly. And then we'll have to have a require relative here as well. But we need to get a little bit higher and pull this from the MySQLX cookbook. Oh dear, no, we need to get much higher because we are in test. Integration default. I guess we need 4 or 5 levels higher, and then we can go into MySQLX. I will do that by trial and error. Cannot load. It tries to pull in. It does try to pull in SRE MySQLX helper. That is actually the correct path. I estimated the number of directory levels correctly, as it seems. But then we have to go into MySQLX test integration helper. So test integration helper. Let's see if this works. Okay. We had 2 failures. It does the same check twice. Why does it do it twice? Interesting. And it checks for read committed and gets back repeatable read, and that of course doesn't match. So repeatable read. Okay. Why does it... Oh yeah, I have the same block twice, that's why. So this should reduce the failures by half. That's easy. No, it didn't. All right. Our exit status is wrong. Interesting. Why wasn't it wrong? Why didn't it that one fail before? Oh, it does a create table. And that of course doesn't work twice in a row. If it's not create table, if not exists, it's the create table. And that of course fails if we have to run this test multiple times. That is actually not... yeah, it's actually not great. But wait. It's supposed to be 0. Yeah, it's supposed to be 0, which is successful, right? Okay. Interesting. That's That must be in here, right? Where we... is that in a test setup or something? Wrong directory again. Just integration in default. DB create spec. So that should be if not exists. Otherwise, we can't repeat our test suite. And yeah, can this be successful without working? What are we testing here? I don't think my change makes a difference for the test. And if it does, we'd have to extend this test to actually access this table. Do a select on it, and that should do it. But yeah, I think that's okay. Now, should still be one failure now, and that is the transaction isolation setting. Transaction isolation setting, which I did change in here, but I mistyped this namespace here. It's tunable without the E, which set a completely irrelevant hash key under a tunable namespace that gets ignored everywhere, and that's why it didn't work. So I need to do another converge run. Hopefully it'll fix the configuration setting. It'll be able to restart MySQL with that configuration setting, and then the test should be successful when we run it. See, sometimes it's these little changes that take much more time than you think. Especially if you take detours. So we are still getting repeatable read here. Now I'll have to look into wait, what? It's just default, huh? So, no, well, that should return repeatable read, which is wrong. Why is it wrong, though? Let's take a look at MySQL d.const.d grab trans. It does get set to read committed. Why doesn't it set it correctly, even though we do an override here? Is that override too late? Let's take another look at MySQLX attributes server. So there is MySQLX tunable transaction dash isolation. Default value is nil. Wait, default value is nil. So there shouldn't be an entry in the configuration file. Did I something confuse it? There shouldn't be an entry in the configuration file at all if the default value is used. Let's try that. So if I disable this and run another converge run, it's not included. I'm setting it to read committed instead of repeatable read, which is the value that I'm expecting. Read committed is what I need. So let's converge again. Oh, I know. Yeah. So if we do this, we get read committed, which is the setting that we need. However, this cookbook has another specialty. Oof, that is tricky. I fell into my own trap. This cookbook changes the foundational cookbook's behavior. MySQLX, the base cookbook, does a restart of MySQL when you make a configuration change. However, that's a behavior we can't have on our production databases because these databases run with oodles of RAM, and if we make a configuration change, we don't want to have all our databases restart immediately, which would create downtimes in the minutes. It would take probably a few minutes to shut down and then another few minutes to launch again. And during that time, all our customers would be offline. So configuration changes must not restart MySQL. And that's what this FriesDBox MySQL cookbook does change. It changes the configuration file, and instead of restarting MySQL, it creates a file restart required in the etc MySQL directory, and our monitoring is supposed to pick that up and create a low-level alert that someone needs to take care of this database, probably do a switch over to the standby database and then restart MySQL, or ideally probably do a kernel upgrade and reboot the whole machine while it is not getting used. And so I can do as many configuration changes in my attributes here as I want if I do not manually do a system control reload. MySQL will probably not do something, will it? It's not even available, so we do have to do a restart. In this test VM, it shouldn't take too long. And now our test will probably be successful. It's not, though. Okay, why isn't it? We wanted read committed. We expected read underscore committed, dash committed, and we got read underscore committed. So our test is wrong. And that's why I hate these dashes. Are we supposed to set read underscore committed or read dash committed? I guess it's read space committed? At least for the SQL command. Ugh. Set the global at server startup, use the transaction isolation equals level. Values of level for this option use dashes rather than spaces. Read dash uncommitted, read dash committed. So that is correct. However, the test needs to check for underscore. Why be consistent, I guess? Dear me. And they do test for read underscore committed. Now I'm getting confused. We do test for... But here it says we expected read dash committed. Are you kidding me? No, that's what's getting returned. Okay. So the test is incorrect and it needs to use a dash. That's the point. Oy, oy, oy. Yeah, okay. Okay. So, thing is, this restart thingy was only necessary because I was developing stuff and things weren't working from the start. Of course, when we run a fresh test suite where this VM gets booted completely from scratch, then settings will be okay from the get-go and no one needs to do a manual intervention here. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do now. I'll log out here and run a complete test suite for all 3 operating systems, just to make sure that this setting gets set and output correctly in all variants, which is MySQL 5.7 on the older operating systems and MySQL 8 on the latest one. Time for another camera reboot. So you can at least see for a few seconds that I haven't aged too much doing this ordeal. It didn't even take a few seconds to get stuck again. Yeah, this is broken. I hope I don't need a new HDMI adapter. Earlier Bethesda said D-message to the rescue. I guess we could try and find out what's happening here. I'm not sure if... Simply says USB disconnect, and that might actually have been my reset, my manual reset. But yeah, from the looks of it, video completion handler, USB disconnect. And then a little later it got the device back again. It's not Maxwell, it's Magewell. And then, yeah, just a few seconds later, it says non-zero status. That's network devices. USB disconnect. Yeah, something's not okay with the hardware, I guess. Back to our cookbooks. Running tests now. I just had an idea, because I'm fairly confident that my namespace mistake earlier wasn't the first time that happened. We could actually have the MySQLX cookbook check if there is a hash key tunable with an E in there. And if that's the case, simply abort, saying, yeah, you have a typo in your somewhere in your attributes, and fix this, and then the cookbook will run. I think that could be helpful. And it's just a single fetch from the hash to make sure this tunable with an E doesn't exist. Let's see where we could fit this in. At least as a to-do comment. I'm leaving tasks for future us. So this VM has just finished and successfully tested. Read committed. Okay. Things are working nicely now. Which means I can... Yeah, I will probably submit a merge request and leave the decision to merge this to the outcome of a team discussion. Auto-suspend in a running USB device? Sys module, USB core, parameters, auto-suspend. It's 2. Should it be something different? I never had to deal with auto-suspend yet. -1. Probably to disable it, huh? Echo -1. In there? Yeah, okay. Sudo T. It does have -1 in there, okay. Let's reset the camera. Camera is back. Shall I keep moving to make sure that we can see that the camera is still working? Well, I keep looking at the confidence monitor now anyway. Huh. That's interesting. I think you discovered something there. Do I have the PowerTop installed? Not sure, because this is not a laptop, so... I do. Pixel Tales over on YouTube. Hello! Is there something I can check with PowerTop? Interesting. Balthasar, please post in our Discord how you found that and where I can read up on that, because I'm really baffled that this actually worked, because I wouldn't expect my capture card to go into auto-suspend within seconds. That weren't connected on power on. Well, actually the USB capture card is always connected. But I'm not sure how the initialization of the whole USB stuff that's connected to my machine actually works. And maybe there are a few delays in things when the system boots up. It'll auto-sleep USB devices that weren't connected on power on. Yeah, of course. I at least after the first suspend, which took a while. And then it kept auto-suspending it. So there is some connection to power top. Interesting. Are we running power top though? It's not running. Not sure if there's anything else in the background that I could check for. But hey, my working camera is proving you right. But that needs some research. Yeah, it might... I mean, we can... U-Power-D. Okay. That is something that I'll look into. Huh, interesting. But hey, you saved me from having to crawl under my desk again and make changes to my setup. Shifty, hey, how are you doing? Looks like our tests are working nicely. I pretty much think this is already the third VM with Ubuntu 24 that's getting tested now. So this change will introduce a different transaction isolation setting for MySQL. Final test. Successful. Wait, there was one action that failed, and that's the 1604. Okay. That got torn down again already, right? No, it's still created. Okay, so we can take a look. Let's go into default Ubuntu 1604 then. I should have run this in a separate Tmux window, but yeah, will do. Possibly because of the portal interaction, because of Flatpak. Yep, I'm running OBS from Flatpak, you're right. You might not be getting the appropriate signals for your power daemon to see the device is in use. Makes perfect sense. Oh, thanks for researching that for me. That's a huge help, thank you. I really appreciate it. So, show variables like trans, and we are read committed. That's not the test that seems to be failing. I should have run that test first before going into the VM. And now I can actually use a different pane for logging in. Oh, we're frozen again. So it's rather random how long this works or not. Okay. No, okay, so there is a failure. Interesting. In test? Nope, it's trying the converter and didn't even succeed. Huh. And that is because we can't install the Percona toolkit for Ubuntu 16 anymore. Well, that's not a surprise. They probably cut support for this ancient version. Which makes sense. But it might actually just be the... Is it just the repository key? Maybe it's just the repository key that changed. Not sure. I'm not going to put too much time into fixing this because I'd rather deprecate support for Ubuntu 16. It's been a long time coming, but if I can do a quick fix, I'll do that. There's a circular saw outside the window. I hope the microphone doesn't pick that up. If it does, I'll have to close the window reluctantly. Let's see, default Ubuntu 16.04. So, if we do an apt install Percona toolkit, the repository should already be set up. It says, do you want to continue? Yes, but it can't be authenticated. Install these packages without verification. Yes, it does install it. It's just the authentication that is failing. So, what does that actually mean? It means that the key to the repository is outdated, right? How does it get installed though? Percona toolkit is part of an intermediate cookbook, so it's another cookbook again, I guess. That is MySQL Freestyle, which is an intermediate cookbook that is more generic. It simply installs MySQL for general purpose, but it adds stuff like Percona tools. And that's in here. And we do add the Percona tools apt repository. We don't use any keys here. We don't supply any keys. And the old repository seems to not have Guess I'll have to look more closely into what is actually failing. So it said cannot be authenticated. So let's find out what that means. Apt packages cannot be authenticated. Apt key. Okay, we'll have to do an experiment. Let me see. Percona tools installation. official repositories as described in the software repositories documentation. Toolkit, documentation, installing toolkit, and I think we just did a round trip, right? Yeah. Other than that, we could download the package directly, but that's not great because apparently there are dependencies. Lots of, a few Perl libraries get pulled in here. Let's see. In the end, we just need to install apt-get to install it, but I guess we need a key in this case. Excuse me. Again, utilities install now. That gets us back here. I think something's broken here. It tries to pull in doc percona repo config. So let's see, legacy docs. Maybe that's that. MySQL software, percona. I guess percona tools isn't legacy. So we'll go in here. Nope, PM, software repositories, install now documentation. Apt, repo, percona.com, percona release, and then percona release to enable and configure the desired percona software repository. So since we already use percona release, we could say percona release. What do we say so far? We do percona release. We install that as a D package. And then we do percona release, enable for the specific software. And I guess we just need the key for percona tools. Hey, final year. How you doing? I'm writing infrastructure code for my company's managed hosting platform. Sorry that the camera is frozen. I have issues. I'm having issues with my capture card. That infrastructure code in this particular case is maintaining our MySQL database clusters. We are running high-performance web hosting for Drupal and WordPress, and that includes running high-performance MySQL clusters. Usually our central MySQL clusters do between 10 and 20,000 queries per second. And everything gets managed using infrastructure code written in Ruby via Chef. What do you mean by architecture? The architecture of my infrastructure code, of our hosting platform? What exactly is it that interests you? So, percona tools repositories. PT. PT. So if we do a Percona release enable PT, maybe PT LTS, not sure. Release. That should do the trick, I guess. You mean the queries per second number is high? Yeah, it is. And in terms of caching, yeah, our MySQL clusters usually have lots of RAM. So select queries get usually served from RAM without any disk access at all. It's just the writes that are always a challenge. The infrastructure as code, yeah, I can explain that to you. Basically, Chef is a domain-specific language built on the foundation of Ruby. It's actual Ruby code that I'm writing. And you create cookbooks, which are usually around a specific topic. In my case, I have actually 3 cookbooks that deal with MySQL on different levels of abstraction. And these cookbooks then have mainly, I'd say, recipes. That's the code that is actually getting executed. Templates, which are basically templates for configuration files that need to be rolled out on the machines. And attributes that are the variables in those configuration files and the whole behavior. So attributes are how you can make different settings and different behaviors. Templates are usually how they are expressed on a server in form of a configuration file, and recipes, that is the actual Ruby code that gets executed on a host to set everything up. And as you can see, we have lots and lots of recipes because, yeah, we have lots and lots of topics that we need to take care of, from setting up the basic services like MySQL, for example, to monitoring, alerting, helper stuff, HTTP proxies, servers, all kinds of things. And yeah, down to cleaning up old kernel images that aren't in use anymore. And so over the last 15 years, we've built up a huge set of cookbooks that automatically take care of a fleet of about 500 Linux servers. And at the moment, I'm dealing with a fairly simple task, which is making a change to one of our MySQL cluster settings. But it turns out it's more of a challenge than I expected. I expected this to be done within a half an hour or so, but I've been at this for almost 2 hours now. So yeah, it always takes longer than you expect, I guess. And in this case, it's because something changed externally. That's always a risk that you run. That while your code is still valid, something outside changes. In this case, the apt repository that we use to pull the Percona MySQL tools from, and they seem to have changed their repository key, or maybe they removed it completely. And now this cookbook that ran, say, 4 weeks ago doesn't run anymore because of the change in their repository. Where are you hosting your code? Our code is mostly hosted in private Git repositories, and environment variables usually don't play into things, since we don't use lots of cloud-native technologies yet, where environment variables are quite commonly used. In Chef, the variable stuff is done via those attributes, which basically gets stored as a huge nested hash in the Chef database itself. You also asked, have you faced any deadlock scenario in SQL? Yes, sometimes there are deadlocks, and actually the change that I'm making right now is related to deadlocks because I'm changing the transaction isolation levels of our MySQL servers. We have been running these servers with the default setting in MySQL, which is repeatable read. However, repeatable read within transactions causes locks, and so using this transaction isolation level can actually cause locks with Drupal and maybe even with WordPress, but we definitely have seen locks and even deadlocks for customer websites. And one of our customers reached out and informed us that Drupal actually recommends changing from read committed to from repeatable read to read committed, which gets rid of a few of the locks that are involved and therefore reduces the risk of longer running locks or even deadlocks. And that's why I'm actually making this change to set the default for our transaction isolation levels to read committed. And now I'm dealing with a completely unrelated thing, which is installing the Percona tools, despite the change that has happened in their repository. What I'm going to try now is I'm going to spin up a standalone MySQL server and see if I can make this fail, and if I can manually use Percona release to get it working, because that then will fix the issue. However, that's a completely unrelated change in a completely unrelated, no, not completely unrelated cookbook. It's a related cookbook. It's a dependency, but I don't want to get sidetracked too much. We'll try that later, actually. So let's see. I cannot get this through because of the change, which I now have fixed manually for the running VM. So let's see if this test run can now successfully finish with my manual intervention. And then we'll deal with the fact that I had to do this manual intervention later. Still failing installing. This time Percona Extra Backup. Ooh, where we are already using Percona release. And again, it's unauthenticated, even though the Percona Extra Backup, well, it's an old version that we did not use Percona release for. Huh. Okay. I don't think Percona release will work though for Ubuntu 16. I might end up simply deprecating Ubuntu 16 for this cookbook. It's time, but let's see. We'll do a Percona release, enable PT and PXB. Which one? There is a node attribute, Percona Extra Backup version. If we are, yeah, we only use PXB Percona release if for the less outdated versions. Happy to answer, Fennel. Say, happy that I stumbled on your channel. Happy for you stopping by. Currently reading Kafka. If you have worked on it, anything you can suggest error handling wise, architecture wise, based on your experience. Haven't used Kafka yet. Making our infrastructure more event-based is something that we have on our roadmap. At the moment, Chef is our main hub for orchestrating stuff, but since Chef Client software has to be run on each host for changes to be applied, and we only run Chef every 10 minutes, we have some delays in there that are tolerable, but not great. And so switching to a more event-based infrastructure where there is a change in one corner of our infrastructure or in the customer dashboard, for example, and that immediately triggers a reaction, a response in our infrastructure is something that I definitely want to have. Of course, architecture-wise, this is not trivial and needs to be well thought out. And I guess there are obviously a few more legacy and tech debt issues that we have to deal with first. And yeah, eventually we'll end up doing something event-based. I don't see myself using Kafka, though. That feels like overkill to me. I'm more thinking of something like using a more traditional message bus, such as RabbitMQ, for example. I'll also take another look at Nats, even though the company behind Nats has lost a little bit of trust lately in the community. So not sure if that's still in the running for me. We'll see about that. So let's see. Percona release. Is there a way you can find out what's actually available? Percona release. What does that command even offer us? Available components. We'll definitely need release. So let's see. Lots of stuff. Yeah, there are enable, setup, disable, show, help, and then lots of Percona products. Where's PT then? PPG, PSM, DB. You have a great day too, Fennel. Step by. Hop in anytime you like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you get a notification when I'll be online again, which is probably going to be on Thursday. Percona tools, where are ya? PPG. PS. After PS, there should be PT. There isn't, though. Tools. PT. It's just PT, I guess. So let's try that. And also really use PS. Percona extra. Backup. PXB. 2.4, I guess. So let's see. Percona release, enable PT, and PXB24. That did not work. Why didn't it? It needs the release as well. Nope, that didn't work either. Do we have that? Do we have to do that step by step? Looks like it. Let's see. It enabled the Percona to repository. And now we'll need a PXB24. Okay. Now let's see if that converge run works. In that case, we can simply switch to using Percona release for even Ubuntu 16. And that way we have a proper process here. Guess our old legacy approach to simply enabling the Debian repository is now finally deprecated and removed. And using Percona release even for very old Ubuntu versions is the way to go. Which is actually a change for the better. It also will make our code more reliable and more uniform, because we can get rid of these conditionals here where we check, are we dealing with Ubuntu 18 plus? If that's the case, then we do Percona release. Otherwise, we'll simply use the apt repository that we configured up here. I can get rid of that completely. We'll simply install Percona release and then install, we'll enable extra backup in the correct version and then install it. And then we'll enable Percona tools and install that. So things get more uniform that way. And yeah, that's fine. And with that manual intervention, the test here worked as well. So we can actually tear down this VM. We'll have to make sure that the base installation that comes from the other cookbook is going to work in the future by using Percona release and stuff. But this change here should be considered finished. I will create an issue in the maintenance cookbook issues project here that Percona tools installation breaks in MySQL FreeStyle. We'll have to use the official process using Percona release here as well. I'll assign that to myself because I already have the necessary context. And that is that. Let me take a look at what I've done so far. We changed the attributes file. Let's take a look at what changes we did. In the attributes file, we override our transaction isolation attribute. That's the main change in this change. The default spec got removed. How is that called temp git blob? Interesting. The server RB in MySQL X. Yeah, that's a different cookbook. Then we'll commit that differently. All right. Welcome back, Prax. Let me see. Git df dot. Yeah. So just to see our current. Yeah. For the time being, I deleted the default spec, but we did add the db create spec, which is in the end then just a rename. We renamed that, didn't modify it apparently, yeah, but we shouldn't have. Test integration config spec is new. The change in the attributes is the main change. That test here is just related to test the attribute change to make sure it works and gets applied. Cooking show is going better, apart from the camera still being broken. The tests are done successfully, so I can go and make a merge request which will require me to do a version bump, rake bump minor. Is that a minor change? I'm changing a configuration setting. That is not going to break anything directly, at least. So yeah, I'd say it's a minor bump, which gives us version 710. And that version then needs to be documented in the changelog. 710. Does expander work? Did I use the semicolon? Oh dear. Timestamp. Don't even know how this works anymore. Let's check. Spanso. Base. It's a colon. Okay, colon date. That gives me the date in ISO format. So colon date should work. Let's see if that's true. Oh, it does not. Is Spanso working? Okay, grab Spanso. Yeah. However, let's see, can we match, list and execute matches from the CLI? Spanso match colon date. What does match do? Match list, okay. Yeah, colon date should do. Yeah, there's something. Probably in terms of the Wayland interaction that's not working. Well, we'll have to enter a date manually then. It's August 26th. And that's a change, so it's changed. Switch MySQL transaction isolation to read. Well, let's use the correct separation here. Read committed. C. For details. Of course, committed. It needs to have 2 T's. And we are using 710. Okay, yeah. Now, more changes. But that should do the trick. That's a feature. Okay. So let's do feature first logs MySQL change transaction isolation. That allows us to actually create a merge request. I can simply copy this. And in this case, I can actually make this a nicer formatted change. Merge request assigned to myself. Review by my colleague. Label is cookbook name. And that's that. Praxis asks when I had to drop, you were talking about your tmux, I guess, and dev setups. Is there a blog on this that I missed? There is a blog post on that. It's older though, so you might not have missed it. You just didn't know about it. So let me see. If we go to my website, monospacementor.com, blog and more, blog, actually might be a few pages down, I guess. Might actually be on my personal blog. Because, yeah, I haven't written about it lately, so maybe I should do a blog post about Chemois that I'm using now. Yeah, makes sense. So no, there's no blog post that you missed. It's a blog post that I still need to write. Okay, camera reset. Maybe it'll hold up for a minute or so. So I can at least switch seats and say goodbye. If not, thanks for watching. Yeah, so this merge request is underway. Still needs to be discussed in terms of, do we want this as the default on all of our clusters? I think we do, but we'll discuss that in the team. And yeah, I guess I'll be back on Thursday, hopefully with a more stable camera connection. And good to see you too, Balthazar. And maybe we can do an impromptu hangout later tonight. I'll check with the family and I'll post in Discord. And people, if you would like to join our Discord, the !Discord, !chat command will get you the Discord URL. And you're more than welcome to join us as well. I see. Okay. Yeah, maybe later this week. I'll see where I have time and we'll discuss that on Discord then. Thanks everyone, this has been fun. It's been great to be back live coding and not just doing my office hour, which will return on Friday. And I'll be back with another live coding stream on Thursday because there's still lots of stuff to do. And I guess I'll see you then. Until then, take care. Enhanced default. Okay, fast, fancy. I think we should be able to run fancy. But just in case, default fast. Okay. Now, dot files. Home. Download. Enhanced default. Enhanced default fancy. Okay.